Okay, this is part 2 of my discussion of the Amazon Kindle. You've already seen the part where I review the thing. This is the part where I give you a quiz about what happens to be in my Kindle. So this isn't about tech stuff. This is about about literature, kind of more personal about me and what I'm reading, and a little bit of a quiz if you're into that sort of thing. So you don't have to watch this one if you just want a review of the technology. This isn't that at all. Okay. I'll read you random lines from the things I've got in my Kindle, and you can try to figure out what I'm reading in my Kindle, okay? Okay, first one. I'm having a crisis of confidence, and I blame Jesus. Actually, my crisis is not so much about Jesus as it is about the impending rapture, which I don't necessarily believe will happen, but I don't believe the rapture won't happen either, and I really don't see any evidence for or against either scenario. It all seems unlikely, but still plausible, interestingly enough. I don't think there is a word for my particular worldview. Nihilism means you don't believe in anything, but I can't find a word that describes partial belief in everything. Okay, that's number one. Okay, let's go to number two. The village of Holcomb stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. You should know that if you know anything. I grew up in an unbearably hot city on the northwest tip of Columbia, a place where style and art were part of the culture. I was constantly surrounded by incredibly vibrant, confident, feminine women who knew who they were and what image they wanted to convey to the world. They knew how to buy the right clothes for their bodies, how to edit out what did not suit them, and how to stay away from fads and maintain an aura of eternal style. And the camera finally gets it right, and Woody, he doesn't say cut, he says okay. He goes, okay, the camera finally got it right, and I was okay, and you're terrible. Some of the students laughed, and some of them recoiled empathetically, Julia continued, caught in the grim memory. So Woody says, let's just go back to the beginning. I was like, oh, I was terrible. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could believe it, but he just said it. Just like that. Like it was no big deal. You're terrible. Oh, my Lord. So I go back to my start mark, shoulders shaking, trying not to be terrible. And by now all the students looked as stricken as she. Okay, you should be able to get this one. A squat gray building of only 34 stories. Over the main entrance, the words Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Center. And in a shield, the world state's motto, community, identity, stability. To one degree or another, the question of what to have for dinner assails every omnivore, and always has. When you can eat just about anything nature has to offer, deciding what you should eat will inevitably stir anxiety, especially when some of the potential foods on offer are liable to sicken or kill you. This is the title of the book. Okay, here's the next one. A cold day in December, long afterward, after the assassination and all the pain, the older man would remember with great clarity the young man's grace, his good manners, his capacity to put a visitor at ease. He was concerned about the weather, that the old man not be exposed to the cold or to the probing questions of freezing newspaper men, that he not have to wait for a cab. Well, in just a few weeks, the young man would become President of the United States, and to the newspapermen standing outside his Georgetown house, there was an air of excitement about every small act, every gesture, every word, every visitor to his temporary headquarters. They complained less than usual, the bitter cold notwithstanding. They felt themselves a part of history. The old was going out, and the new was coming in, and the new seemed exciting, promising. that how we're going to feel in 2009 when the next president is inaugurated? Okay. Now this one's a compilation, so I'm just picking one that I think would be most interesting. How often we are moved to admit the intelligence exhibited in both the designing and the execution of some of his works. Take The Fly, for instance. The planning of The Fly was an application of pure intelligence, morals not being concerned. Not one of us could have planned The Fly, not one of us could have constructed him, and no one would have considered it wise to try, except under an assumed name. All this happened more or less, the war parts anyway, are pretty much true. One guy I knew really was shot in Dresden for taking a teapot that wasn't his. Another guy I knew really did threaten to have his personal enemies killed by hired gunmen after the war, and so on. I've changed all the names. I really did go back to Dresden with Guggenheim money, God love it, in 1967. Looked a lot like Dayton, Ohio, more open spaces than Dayton has. There must be tons of human bone meal in the ground. Yet as harsh, provocative, and abusive as Rodham was, he and his wife, the former Dorothy Howell, imparted to their children a pervasive sense of family and love for one another that, in Hillary's case, is of singular importance. When Bill Clinton and Hillary honeymooned in Acapulco in 1975, her parents and her two brothers, Hugh Jr., and Tony, stayed in the same hotel as the bride and groom. Dorothy and Hugh Rodham, despite the debilitating pathology, an undertow of tension in their marriage, discerned readily by visitors to their home, were assertive parents who at mid-century intended to convey to their children an inheritance secured by old-fashioned values and verities. After an unequivocal experience of the inefficacy of the subsisting federal government, you are called upon to deliberate on a new constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks in its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts of which it is composed, the fate of an empire, in many respects the most interesting in the world. It's the Kindle. So that's what I've got in my Kindle right now. What else should I order? You make some suggestions. It'll take me forever to read all of these books because I'm going to read it in dribs and drabs while doing any number of other things. But, reading in a random way. Is it so wrong? Maybe it is. Maybe it is.